I'm thinking of a time now that when a nation was in captivity, it was Israel. And they were down in Egypt and was made hard and rigor to serve the Egyptians. It seemed like that everybody had just grown cold. Did you know Israel was in Egypt twice as long as the United States has been a nation? We're not over about 150 or 70 years old, something like that, and they were 420 years in bondage or down in Egypt. But it come a time when it seemed like that all hopes is gone. But there was one man and woman who seemed to have faith in a historical God that spoke to Abraham in the time of crisis, and they believed they could call on him and he'd answer. Amen. That was Amram and Jehoshaphat, the wife of Amram, the mother and father of Moses. And this year, some time ago, I was preaching and gave a little illustration of how that Amram would come home at night and he'd say, Josephine, I am so tired. And the fresh lashes on his back from a taskmaster's whip. And she would sit down patiently, perhaps, and wash out the places and weep and say, oh, Amram, isn't there something that can be done? I would hear him say, oh, dear, if you'd have been with me today and seen them beat them young boys trying to pull those loads. But they were heartless. They treated them like they were animals. And that's our young man of Israel. Isn't there something can be done? That's what I wonder now, to see our young teenage boys that will be the men and women of tomorrow, our teens today. Hair down in their neck and breeches pulled out over their hips and the pistol stuck in their side and a cigarette in the side of their mouths. What will it be? It's still slavery under the devil. Amen. Isn't there something that can be done? And Amram, perhaps one of the only ones of the nation, would climb up a little stair steps, regardless of how tired he was. There each night he'd call on the God of Abraham, the one that he had learned, that come to Abraham and come to Job and come to Isaac and come to Jacob in hours of distress. And surely if he was God in their day, he'd be God in that day. Amen. And if he was God in Moses' day, he's God today. Amen. He just needs to be called up out of history and called on the scene of action. And I can see Amram night after night, no matter how tired. That proved his faith in that God. But today the people, if they don't get everything they ask for, the first time they pray, they seem to think that he's dead. What we need is men and women today of gallant spirit. Men and women who are determined to hold on till they see a God that really lives come into action. That will not take no for an answer. They're determined to stay with it. If they are sick and the doctor has said they can't get well, yet something within them tells them they're going to be well. Hold on no matter what takes place. If you join the churches of the denominational world, until you have sapped all your strength from walking from place to place, and you still can't find relief, there's still a God that answers prayer and saves from sin. And as we can see Amram on those weary nights, back bleeding, climbing up the steps again until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, praying and seemed like he's just talking to the wind. Down in his Jewish heart there burned a faith that no winds of doubt could ever blow out. That's the kind of men and women we need to rise on the scene today. Amen. If He doesn't answer tonight, He will tomorrow night. If He doesn't answer this year, He will next year. For He's a God. Not a God, but the God. Amen. And we see night after night as Amram climbed the steps, and Jehoshaphat would come up to him and say, Amram, dear, you've been up here praying all night. Why don't you just tell some of the boys where you're working and let them pray a while? Well, honey, what if they don't do it? Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to pray through. Amen. That's the way every Christian ought to feel tonight. Not waiting for somebody else, but take the front ourselves and go through. Amen. If we believe the Bible to be a history, it's also a prophetic book that tells that that same God shall rise in the last days. And it's time for Him to come on scene. That's what Amram knows. That Moses had prophesied, or not Moses, pardon me, Abraham, had been given a promise by this God of history who hadn't answered a prayer in 400 years, as far as we have record. But He made a promise that He would bring them out. And seemingly we've had a silent God for a long time. But the hour has come where He's going to rise on the scene. One night when Amram had prayed maybe for several years, and his hair now was turning gray and no deliverance, but just getting worse. One night he got right down to business. That's how we have to do it. Get right down to business. He said, God, You promised this, and we've looked forward to it, and we see the signs all here, and the time is at hand. It's time for You to do something about it. While he was in deep, concentrated prayer, praying with all of his heart, he looked standing in the corner. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. There stood an angel with a sword drawn. He said, deliverance is coming. And you're going to bring a son into the world, and He's going to be the one to deliver him. See, God always answers prayer, doesn't He? Amen. If we just hold on.